Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for taking the time, despite the circumstances in South Africa, for you to attend. I honestly believe that you're going to take incredible value from today's session. From those of you who don't know me, my name is Elaine Kruger. I am the chairperson for the Association for Skills Development in South Africa. And on a monthly basis, we have national events. And during this time, we have insights into what is happening on the skills development landscape, but just to mix things up a little bit and to deliver some really encouraging, inspiring and motivating content to you this morning, we have a really amazing guest speaker with us. So I'm very privileged to have him on board with us today. I'm going to do a brief introduction and just tell you a little bit about Jabulani. Even in the short conversations that we've had telephonically, I've left the conversations with goosebumps, feeling really encouraged and motivated. So, okay, just to give you a little bit of information about Zwane. He is a speaker, an executive coach, a facilitator, and a mindset development specialist in leadership, a high-performance relationship management, diversity inclusion, for organizations and high-impact individuals. He has over 15 years of experience in human development in various industries, both locally and globally. Mr. Zwane is a founder of the Mindset Development Institute, which specializes in custom design programs through a groundbreaking mindset development framework. And this enables organizations and individuals to reach their goals. He is a thought leader at the Lenses Group, which is a USA-based organization that specializes in helping organizations to integrate the diversity based on race, culture, and power dynamics. He's also an executive member of the Professional Speakers Association for South Africa at the Pretoria chapter. And Mr. Zwane holds a 4-year degree in theology, management development program through Gibbs. Just to give you some insight into who some of his clients are, it's Big South Africa, FNB Digital Banking, and CRU International. He did a beautiful diversity management course for the South African staff of the USA team. So Jabu, welcome to today's event. We are absolutely thrilled to have you on board. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to share with us. I would also like everybody to encourage everybody to get in touch with Jabu post this session. He has so much to offer to organizations as well as to individuals. So Jabu, please take it away.
Good morning. Thank you so much, Elaine, for such a warm welcome. It's always such a weird thing hearing, a bio being said, being read about you. And worse, I think, is when you have to write that together to send to people like yourself and then have to hear it back to being read to you. But anyway, it was great. It's great to be here this morning, and I want to really thank you so much for the opportunity to be here with everybody. I'll never take it lightly to get such a platform to talk to the people that you have built relationships with, and I take it really seriously that you entrusted me with all these amazing people here, and I do hope that I'll be able to to match up to the expectations, or at the very least to give them the value that they're hoping to get this morning.
Thank you. Thank you. Your humility is inspiring. Thank you, Jabu.
It's my pleasure. Well, this morning I wanted to just, talk a little bit about how do we navigate this fast changing landscape. So in mindset development, one of the things that I do is that I am constantly in the process of developing thinking frameworks to help to engage the ever-changing landscape, to prepare myself emotionally, my clients emotionally, to also prepare them in terms of how they think and how they can engage the events that are unfolding. A simple example would be, what I had to do yesterday, given what's happening in the country. Many platforms have asked me to come forward to just try and unpack, how do you prepare yourself in terms of your mindsets to engage the, what's unfolding, the fear that people are currently experiencing, the obvious concerns about the future of the country and about what people sometimes look at the lack of very clear leadership in the country. And obviously that makes people very, very scared. I'm talking to a lot of clients who are thinking about even immigrating and asking me, how is that really the best way to go forward? If I leave the country now, I go to another country, what things do I have to expect? But anyway, I want to talk to you about that this morning. I want to address something very important, as part of explaining the mindset development. So I'm going to start off by sharing a screen with you. The Mindset Development Institute is an institute that I founded in the last 3 years, based on my many years of experience as a pastor, as a development specialist in leadership and relationships and entrepreneurship in many different industries, both here and globally as well. So in mindset development, there are like 5 different principles, but this morning I'm only going to be covering one. But before I do that, I like to actually go into explanations. And so in sort of like giving us a guideline on what's going to happen this morning, we're going to look at what mindsets are, what is awareness, the framework of awareness, the impact of human limitation in awareness, and also the impact of awareness. And I'm going to be using that to actually help us to engage specifically, how do we prepare ourselves for the fast changing landscape? If you are a company, how do you posture yourself to ensure that in your processes of development, you include that, you integrate that into your planning, into equipping your employees, into equipping yourself as a leader, and making sure that even if you are into product development, for example, you are developing products that are relevant to your particular client and where clients are going, where they're at and where they're going. So what are mindsets? Mindsets are structured categories of thinking that lead to a specific outcome. So our minds arrange information in categories. That's just the way that we are designed scientifically. In relatability, based on familiarity, based on sequence, based on order, based on many different, many different categories. And that's what's important for us to understand, is that, scientific research is telling us that by the time that, for example, a thought comes up to your mind to become conscious, there's already about 40 billion bits of information that have already built up in your unconscious mind before that information becomes conscious in your mind, which basically means the following. When you don't understand that there's structured categories of thinking that are building in your mind all the time, but then thoughts are happening to you. Thoughts are happening to you as opposed to you facilitating thoughts that are coming into your mind and directing them into achieving the things that you want. So then mindset development is a scientific process of how thoughts develop and expand within the unique design of our minds. And emphasis there on unique design is to understand that every single one of us have got a very unique mind, design, and a unique mind because of we live in different environments. We have variations and differences in terms of the way that we're designed. Even when we're all right now listening to what I'm saying in your many different environments, some of you are hearing birds chirp outside. Some of you are being distracted maybe by children around you. Some of you maybe are warm. Some of you are cold. So even though you're hearing the same thing, the same words, and you have comprehension of and unpacking the same words, but you're not experiencing what I'm saying in the same way. And therefore the outcome is going to be different. That's important for us to understand. And some research quickly, I don't want to bore you too much, but it's just for your own interest, the National Science Foundation speaks about the idea that there's up to 60,000 thoughts that we're thinking per day. Now the question is that if there's 60,000 thoughts you're thinking per day, how many of those are you aware of? Consciously, you are only able to process up to 2,000 bits of information. That's about 20 megabytes. Whereas people like Dr. Ben Carson, who's the leading neurologist in the world, we know him, he was part of the Trump administration. He talks up to about 10 million bits of information that we're processing at an unconscious level. And some Other places, they speak about 40 million bits of information. So simple mathematics, 2,000 over 40 million, that means less than 0.1% of the information that you and I are processing at a conscious level. Only 0.1% that we are processing at a conscious level. And that is a scary thing. So you can imagine if you only have control over 0.1% of your information processing, what does that translate into? A couple of things. Up to 80% of the information that we think every day is repetitive. And sadly, up to 80% of that is oriented towards negativity. I don't want to call it negative, but we are postured to be aware of negative things. Why? Because our brain tells us that we need to be safe. The primary function of our brain is to help us to be safe. And so then we have a hypersensitivity and hyper awareness to things that could potentially harm us. And that is a great thing. Why is that a great thing? It's a great thing because if you're not aware of what can harm you, you can easily die, like literally. You walk into things and they'll kill you. So you better be aware of what can potentially harm you. In relationships, in the workplace, where you're walking around right now in SA, rightfully so, all of us want to know what's happening in many different parts of the world. You're not just going to get out of your car right now, get into your car and then go out to go to a mall without knowing whether or not there's a mob over there potentially looting the place, which is putting yourself in harm's way. So it is actually an amazing tool that we are able to pick up negative things. The only thing is that we have to then take that information, integrate that into our intellect, and use that to come up with intelligent strategies on how we can overcome potentially harmful things. It's a challenge when we make that, we may only use that information to protect ourselves. Now, if you think about a simple example, if you are in a sports and the two teams are playing, let's say rugby, but the other team is only defending, eventually the team that is defending is going to be overcome because defensive energy takes a lot more. It requires a lot more intellectual application, a lot more energy, and if you're just defending yourself, eventually the guys who are offending, who are coming against you, are going to score a goal against you, and they will win. But because you're not trying to score the other side, they only have to score one goal against you, and then you're going to lose anyway. So we've got to then find ways to win. All right. There's some more interesting information talking about how do we keep up, why should we keep up, and why should we be aware of the fast-changing environment. This is a very interesting stat that every human being, this was in 2015, they said that by 2020, every human being will be producing 1.7 megabytes of information every second. Every human being. And that basically translates into about 44 trillion gigabytes every day. This is scary. And another thing that is very interesting, that's a recent research in 2021 from Statista.com, is that in line with the strong growth of data and volume, the installed base of storage capacity is forecast to increase, growing at a compound annual rate of 19.2% over the forecast period from 2020 to 2025. What that translates into basically means that every 3 years, ladies and gentlemen, information is doubling. Every 3 years, information is doubling. So if you are in an industry right now and you come in today, you have your degree, 3 years later, if you have not done anything to develop your skills further, you are basically behind. Your clients are they're 2 times ahead of you in terms of the amount of information they have, in terms of the amount of skills they've developed, in terms of the information that they now have in their knowledge pool. You are falling behind. So if you don't have skills development, such as what we have right now with what Elaine is doing, this is why this is so important, because there has to be people out there in the world who are consistently keeping up with the rapid growing information globally. If we are not doing that, it means that we're going to be producing products that don't match our clients' needs. We're going to be producing products that don't match our clients' intellectual competence or intellectual levels. It means that we're going to be producing, we ourselves, when we're solving problems of our clients, we're going to be falling behind in understanding their needs, in meeting their human limitation. I hope I've driven that point to a certain degree. And in mindset development, one of the things that I look at to develop my programs and to develop my products is to look at the human limitation. And human limitation has 5 important components to it. The first one is substance. Obviously, our physical substance. That's one of the reasons why we're struggling with coronavirus right now. It's because we have a limited substance. If you look at the 5 human limitations, they're going to point you to the 5 industries that are massive in the world. Every product in the world, every industry in the world that is directly solving a human limitation is massive. Under your substance, you have your health, you have your pharmaceuticals, you have your gyms, you have your beauty products. You have, anything, a clothing industry, all of that has to do with beauty. All of that has to do with what? The human limitation of the physical substance, because it is deteriorating and it needs assistance. And so when you're coming up with foods, for example, food as a basic need, that's about human limitation. Taking care of our mental health, our brain health, our physical health, that's human limitation. Over here, then we have presence. Presence is about location. Since we are a substance that can only be at one place at one time, then our presence is limited. That's one of the reasons why we are having this discussion right now on Zoom. Zoom is solving that problem. Cell phones are solving the problem. Cars, you name it. I'm sure you get that by the picture now. Those are massive. This is IT, information technology. It's a huge industry. Why? Because it is solving a huge human limitation. Then there's a factor of ability or performance. The way that I describe performance has got 5 components to it. It is the ability itself, which is what can I do as a human being. And then there's a factor of capacity. How much of what I'm doing can I do? Thirdly, competence. How well can I do what I'm doing? Fourthly is fitness, and that has different components to it. The first one being energy that you are having to expend, endurance, flexibility, which is about adjusting to the different obstacles in the environment. And then there's agility. And then there's adjustability, which is what we're talking about this morning, acclimatizing to the fast-changing climate. How do you ensure that you prepare yourself to do that? Now, that's one of the reasons why, for example, athletes that have high agility, high fitness are the highest paid, because they can be able to adjust themselves in various industries. But then if your company uses that same model, you can look at capacity operationally. You can look at competence. What kind of skills do I need to have? You can look at fitness, and you can look at the different types of skills, the degrees of skills, the variance in terms of the diversity of skill that you have. And then the last and most powerful component of performance is confidence, which is about self-belief in you as a person, one performing things, and then of also in how you and the abilities, the things that you are able to perform. You can have all the other 4 components: ability, competence, capacity, fitness. But if you as a human being don't have confidence, all of those 4 things have mean absolutely nothing. And your potential as a human being is trapped in all of your 5 components of performance operating at their maximum level. So the maximum level, all those 5 components operating together, that constitutes a scientific calculation, equation of your potential. So if you ever wanted to calculate your potential, that's one of the things that I'm able to do, is I can be able to look at those 5 components and be able to determine for you what your potential is. And another one is existence. Existence is about the fact that as soon as we're born, guys, as soon as we're born, we're dying. We start our dying process as soon as we're born. And along with that, there's the effect of time, day and night. The reason why time is a limitation factor is not because time is limited. It is because we are limited, right? Because I'm limited, if I am in Pretoria and I need to go to Midrand, my time is at odds with me. I've got to integrate time into my human limitation and my ability to operate. If I don't integrate that, then time becomes a factor that that's going to work against me. I'm going to go on, move on. And then the last thing is about the mind. The mind is limited, which is because of our consciousness, the fact that I've just explained now, all of those factors. And so then in terms of awareness, the reason why we need to be aware, I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but as human beings, we're designed with this incredible ability to extract information that is fast rate. But our awareness is trapped in our position and our location. Location, as I've explained now, where as a South African, You and I are aware of certain things. When I travel to the United States, one of the shocking factors is that a lot of Americans don't lock their doors. They don't lock their cars and they don't lock their homes. And as a South African, I'm always having to run back. I remember I was staying with this family last year for like 9 months. And every single time we left the house, I would run back to go lock everything. And the one time I locked everything, and then the keys were locked inside the house because the South African was worried about, about crime. And the guy said, why do you do that? I'm like, well, I'm South African, man. You know, where I'm from, you better lock your stuff in. I don't care what it is. You better have a lock for everything. You know, you lock it. So my awareness based on my location is different. So when you come from an environment that is very unsafe, then you become more aware towards safety. If you're coming from an environment that is safe, then your awareness of safety is very low, right? Your awareness of danger is very low. So for guys like myself who grew up in a very difficult environment with with hardly any food, some of us know. When I was growing up, I've had like 5 days in a row where I didn't have any food, where I didn't eat anything. I've been homeless for like 4 months. Living right now in Alexandra, you see where all the stuff are being burnt in Alexandra, those abandoned buildings just outside of Marlborough. I've lived in those abandoned buildings for 4 months, working for 35 rand a day. That was like 21 years ago. All right. So as a result, my awareness of the imminent danger, the obstacles that are in whatever I'm doing is there all the time. One of the reasons why a lot of, for example, if I can put it this way, one of the reasons why a lot of white South Africans struggle so much with what's happening is because, for the most part, they grew up in an environment that had a degree of safety, and therefore danger was not a variable of complexity that they had to worry about all the time. For many of us Black people, danger was pretty much a daily occurrence and a variable that we had to integrate in how we process life. Struggle is something that we expect to be part of our lives. And therefore, when things happen, simple example, Elaine, think about this. This is, let's say when I go to the bank, right? And I'm waiting in the long queue. You know, I always know that there's a white guy behind me when the queue is long, the breathing. Is that hearing? And then the tapping of the foot. And then all the Black guys are like, whatever, we're expecting this. But anyway, I'm just saying this to say, in terms of levels of awareness, and this is one of the challenges right now when you're reading the social media to bring what's happening. Let's say why there's such variance in commentary. Because some people are used to this kind of thing and they understand their frustrations and the level of awareness of the variables that contribute to the levels of frustrations and having to displace that. Not that I'm condoning. That's why the discussions are so different. But so that's location. The last thing is about then position. Position is about what is your role in the environment that you're in. Are you there as a leader? Are you there as a mother? Are you there as a policeman? Are you there as a doctor? Which part of the equation or of the impact are you in? Are you at the receiving end of the impact of what's happening? Or are you the one that is instigating the impact? As a leader, you are the instigator of impact. You determine, you for the most part, what you do impacts everybody else. The salary that you give them, the kind of mood. If you're a moody leader, then you create an environment and a culture of moodiness. If you are a favoring leader, then you create a culture of favoritism. There's so much more that I can say about this, but I think for now, let me just hold it right here, and then we can maybe take questions, because I can go on for the whole day without having to stop. But at this particular point, I'd like to stop right here and perhaps take questions around how do you use awareness as a principle in mindset development to build maybe your skills development programs in your company in line with what you are trying to achieve? How do you even use that in your own personal life? In South Africa, as a South African, with the unfolding events, with COVID-19, with the current riots, how do you use awareness as a way of developing
structured categories of thinking that can help you to achieve what you want and enabling you to function at an optimal level, regardless of what's going on around you.
Absolutely insightful. And I think, just to answer that question, just to kick off, I think for me, it's critical to not remain in a negative state, so that when the negative thoughts do come to mind, as they all do, you have to sort of rationalize them and then put them into the context. Actually safe right now, where I am, not tomorrow or in half an hour's time, am I feeling safe right now? And the negativity is incited by what we see on the media, but then we have to put it into the context of where we are present at that very moment. And to not dwell on that negativity, because that negativity then leads to fear.
Yeah, because the thing about fear is this, fear, as the reason why we fear again is because of our human limitation. And the fear specifically is connected to the human limitation of performance. What do I mean say performance? In other words, the ability to protect myself against imminent danger. I mean, the ability to protect my family against the imminent danger. When I process the fact that I don't have enough ability in a form of resources, in a form of support, in a form of other structures that can help me to protect myself, such as the police, for example, or money, for example, to be able to move, or a car, or whatever resources. When I calculate that and I realize that it's not enough, then I begin to fear, because then I feel helpless. And the mindset development then says, in terms of awareness, what do you notice? How do you notice it? Where do you notice it? Why do you notice it? What can you do about it? When you start asking yourself, what can I do about it? I see there's a danger. I see it's happening right now. This is why it's happening. And then this is what I have. What can I do about it? So as soon as you say to your mind, what can I do about it? Then your mind begins to collect, to put together all your information that you know to help you to come up with a plan on how you can be able to do that. But as soon as you say, well, I cannot do anything about it, then your brain says, okay, you don't want to do anything about it, then let's shut down all your thinking faculties and let's find out how you can just do nothing about it. But unfortunately, emotions are responding and say, dude, hold on, this is dangerous. That's when anxiety comes in. That's when fear comes in. That's when it takes you down. Very good point.
There's also has to be a level of awareness when we're dealing with our teams. I mean, many of us are making the skills development decisions in our organization, and they're influenced by so many different components. So there's compliance targets that need to be met. There's a budget allocation that's given. And so often we're driven by checking those boxes as opposed to really being aware and understanding what the individual actually needs. So as much as what there is as a critical component associated with developing competency against a very specific technical skill, I'm seeing a move now towards skills development being more about equipping the individual to cope in their role, equipping the individual to becoming a better human being, and other things that also contribute to the productivity of the business, such as critical thinking, problem solving, analytical thinking, emotional intelligence, absolutely critical. And there are so many businesses that are seeing the need for this, and are concerned and are aware about the frailty of the human mind of their employees and wanting to develop that. If I can open up the floor to anybody else that may have questions for John, specific to your team, your own personal mindset, in your development.
Excellent. Now, going back to what Elaine was just saying now, in terms of awareness, I mean, the questions that we have to ask ourselves, and one of the questions is, whenever we have something new that we have to introduce in our companies, for example. So, what are some of the things that we need to be aware of? What are some of the things that can stand in the way of us being able to execute or implement the change correctly? Now, the first question that I like to make us aware of is this. We have to ask ourselves this question: why do human beings think? And one of the reasons why we as human beings think is because we need to be able to understand information. All right. So, and information information does not become knowledge unless we can understand it. So what is understanding? An understanding is an ability to interpret information into knowledge, where we begin to see how relevant, where it is relevant, where it is applicable, and when we become proficient in it. So we have to then be very mindful in terms of how do we simplify the change, how do we communicate in ways that are very simple, so that everybody can be able to understand the problems that it's solving and also the solution that it is creating. So we think so that we can understand, so that we can solve problems and then be able to create solutions. And one of the things that I want us to, that I like to also look at is whenever there's change, especially right now in South Africa. Let me quickly go forward. I'm not going to go too much into this, but I want to share with you my model that I normally use that I call the life stages model. And in this model, I look at why it is important for us to be mindful of where the people in our company are at, where in terms of their life stages are. So if it's the beginning of anything that we're implementing, for example, obviously people don't know much about it, and because they don't know much about it, the level of awareness is low, and because the level of awareness is low, they're at that dependent stage, which means more training, more explanation, more trying out, more making mistakes. If you don't take that into consideration when you're implementing something new, obviously you're going to have problems. And somewhere in the middle, then they become more stable as they become more fluent in with the new skills, with the new changes that are being implemented, and become more confident. And eventually, at a point, they get to a point of ownership, which is where now they're driving the change, where they're coming up with new ways of becoming more efficient, becoming more productive in the new change. But unfortunately, a lot of times, what I've noted with a lot of companies is that, because of the pressures, I suppose, the operational pressures, what ends up happening is that they end up not measuring the time correctly, and then putting a lot of pressure on people's energies, intellectual energy, physical energy, emotional energy. And then, of course, when they are now supposed to be expending or facilitating those energies in a form of knowledge, then because of they don't have enough time, and they're being put under pressure physically, they're being put under pressure emotionally, then execution becomes, it is in jeopardy. And execution is in jeopardy. And it's not necessarily because people don't have ability. It's not because they don't have the skill. It's not because they don't even have the potential to be able to execute or to implement the change. But if we don't take into consideration the factors that I've mentioned, where you look at, even in terms of your dynamic of your company, the ages of people, whether you've got women that have children or not, whether you have people that are married or not, whether you have the age group of people or not, then you have a problem in implementing those changes, because you need to understand where everybody is at. Unfortunately, for the most part, we still went on that thing where we're saying to people, hey, don't bring your personal business at work. Keep your personal business at work, and business is business. But unfortunately, a human being is whole. A human being is not separate. They are one person with all of these experiences. And if you're asking them to shut down a very important part of who you are, you're also asking them to shut down a very important part or that they need to be able to perform at the optimal level. So any questions around maybe the issues of, maybe life stages? How can you, what are some of the ways that you can equip you, or what are some of the ways you can build, a tool, or be able to figure out what the dynamic of a team as it is informed by life stages, age, life dynamics as far as whether they're married or not, how long they've been in the business, because all of those factors inform. their choices. And by the way, in South Africa, people that are coming from the townships versus people that are in the suburbs. I'll share with you a case just now, but maybe just ask some questions. I'll share with you a very interesting case that I've just done now with another company.
I think there's a large shift that we're having to make, and I know that we speak about digital transformation, but that is the outcome at the end of the day. Understanding how the different age groups, I think that is quite critical, because that can either move an organization forward, or it can hold the business back. And I think it's critical that we adapt to understanding the learning styles that the different age groups actually have, and how impactful, say for example, a face-to-face program in the South African landscape, it's still very, very needed. And even with a younger generation, with individuals who maybe have been schooled in a rural environment, they may very well be a millennial, but at the same time, they still appreciate the face-to-face instruction, because it's hands-on, and because of their lack of exposure to technology, their schooling career.
And that is what you just said now, Elaine, is so important, so important. And just in terms of those different age groups, the proficiency levels with technology, in terms of where they were raised, a lot of the younger guys, they were raised with so many variables, technology being part of it, and also access to many different parts of the world. And this is one of the things that we don't take into consideration. When I look at my kids right now, for example, I look at what they having to study at school. I have 4 boys and 1 girl. 3 boys at the age of 11, like triplets. I have a daughter that has special needs, and I've got a son who's 14 years old, he's a teenager. And when I help these 3 kids, my daughter with the special needs, my son who's 14 years old is a teenager, and then these ones who are not, who are at age age 11, and you're looking at what the variables that they're having to negotiate with every day in terms of school, the use of technology, access to information. There's a lot of information that they're having to negotiate, more than what we had to when we were growing up. And so in terms of the ability to concentrate with many distractions, we sometimes as leaders, in terms of our generation, we start thinking, why are they always on their phones and this and that? But that is their world. To them, that is their normal. Yes, there are certain research that are coming up to explain some of the limitations, but there were also limitations with the way that we grew up. The fact that we knew so little, we only had to negotiate and to interact rather with so few variables on our day-to-day basis. We went to school, came back home, went to play outside on the streets, coming up with different ideas of games. They don't have to do that. Everything is at their fingertip. And therefore, that state of wanting something new, state of, I got this, I got to move on to the next thing, I got this, I got to move on to the next thing. If we don't maintain that, then they get easily bored in our companies. They get very easily bored. And then that's when they start asking you 1,000 questions. And you're like, oh, these young kids are so annoying. But their brain is used to operating at a certain level at processing so much information at a time. One of the things I wanted to just share with you guys, especially about the life stages, because I think that's so key. And this is the thing that I normally do for myself, by the way. Whenever I find myself having to start something new, I have to consistently remind myself of this reality. So I'm going to share quickly a screen with you, which is a very simple life stages model that kind of will orient us to maybe hopefully to be very kind with ourselves sometimes when change happens. So there are different things that I want us to be aware of here. The first one is about awareness and intellectual competence. over here, age here is just here as a number and more as an indicator, more something that we can relate to and to try and give us a wider, a broader view and maybe broader scope of understanding. And then, of course, there's about understanding that whenever we're involved in anything new that we have to get done, or whatever we have to learn, there's the beginning, the middle, the peak, and then if we don't do anything to go further than the peak, we plateau, and eventually we start to descend. And then down here, then we have the impact, and then last year we have control. So whenever we're starting anything new, whenever we find ourselves at the beginning of anything, our levels of awareness are low. And as I've said, we're at the survival and foundational stage, and then we tend to then be more physiological. We tend to depend on the most basic faculties of our intelligence, a lot of which, of course, are sensory, as we're trying to figure out. And then at some point, then when we become more independent, so it's like if you're looking here, you're comparing that with a child, for example, of 0 to 16 at the beginning of their life. What are some of the things that we have to be mindful of? The things that are dependent. And because they're dependent, they also have less control. They have less control because they have less intellectual competence because of a lack of information. It's not necessarily because somebody you're dumb. And whenever you're starting something new in a company, there is this notion where because of the targets and the pressures that we're facing, we start thinking that when somebody's struggling to have a grasp of a new skill or system change, we start thinking that they're not smart enough because we have this, unfortunately, in mindsets. We talk about fixed mindsets, which is a research that was done by Dr. Carol Dweck, which is this notion that when people are intelligent, they can get things fast and they don't have to apply too much of themselves physically, intellectually, because they're just smart. And that's a misconception of intelligence. Because intelligence is about developing our intellectual structure so that we become competent in facilitating information, in interpreting information, in being able to measure, to calculate, to determine all of those factors. So at the beginning of anything, just like with a child, you are like a child. It doesn't matter that you're 60, it doesn't matter that you're 50. You are like a child, and in that state where you don't have enough knowledge and your awareness is like that of a child, you know, all of us with children, when we're walking down the street, their awareness is so low, they can run in front of a car because their awareness levels are very low. Similarly, when somebody is new in the company, they also have a low level of awareness. When you understand that, then you don't mislabel people's struggles when they're learning at the beginning of something, but you see it for what it is. And I know it's difficult when you have targets, when you have urgencies, and then there's work that's piling up. And perhaps it's a matter of companies having to renegotiate the terms sometimes in saying, yes, in terms of the targets and the pressures that we have to integrate the matter of time that is required to develop new skills. Development being key. When you and I, Elaine, have done the teaching in maybe a facilitated program, people's skills are not developed yet. We only gave them a starting point. They have to practice. They have to grow in that. And what is growing? Growing is first of all observation, looking at what's going on. Then it's learning, identifying what you're learning. Then it's integration, integrating what you know into the knowledge pool that already exists in your mind, and then being able to relate that to everything else that is around the environment that you're in. Then there's the fact of practice. That's the fourth thing. Practicing what you already know, which means that you're going to be making mistakes as you try and figure out where the gaps are. And then lastly, it's application. And in applying, then you become, applying it a few times, then you become proficient. Then you develop a high level of proficiency in whatever you're doing. But unfortunately, a lot of times with companies, we don't do that. And when people are at that stage of dependence, we want them to be independent because they've exhibited a high level of intellectual ability in other things. And we can misunderstand somebody's proficiency in one thing and think because they're doing something very well over some time that they can easily then grasp a new thing. And then when they don't grasp a new thing, the expectation that you put on them to be able to do that, the fear of disappointing you as a leader, the fear of also thinking maybe they're not as smart as what they are, that adds the pressure. And then all of a sudden, they're not able to facilitate their own skills, their own experience, their own knowledge very well because of all these other pressures that are kind of pushing them down. So I use a life stage model a lot of times to help my clients and companies to take it easy on themselves, but most importantly, also to integrate the element of time in skills development, in understanding how skills develop over time, and also not losing, because if you don't do this, ladies and gentlemen, you're going to lose some of your key skills, and, some of your key people, not because of there was no match or synergy, or there was a lack of willingness or even potential, but simply because there were just certain variables that you didn't consider as part of your equation when you were making certain decisions. So with this life stage models, maybe Elaine, let's try and see if people can have questions around this one, and maybe it would be better to then help me to extract a bit more information out of my mind with questions, ladies and gentlemen, please. Be very helpful. Perhaps you were asking yourself, how can I develop a higher level of awareness? One of the ways that we can develop a higher level of awareness is through questions. So actually, questions are key. And asking the right questions is also very key. Why? Because the right questions help us to have the right answers. The right answers then help us to have the right decisions. And then the right decisions obviously then help us to have the right outcomes. And so in looking at awareness, these are some of the questions that we have to ask ourselves. And I'm going to quickly share a screen with you guys. Another part that is important for us to develop the right kind of awareness is that we have to look at the purpose. If we don't have purpose in our minds, then it becomes very difficult for us, or rather, to know what kind of information we have to extract from the environment. Purpose determines then our resolve. So if I'm a manager and I'm asking myself, I have to do this, I have to implement this new change, I have to reach this target. If I don't ask myself, where is the struggle? Then I won't be able to find out where the struggle is, and I won't be able to come up with a solution that addresses the struggle. But if I'm just saying, how can I push these people to reach the target? Then my answers are going to be along the lines of, how can I push these people to reach the target? And we all know what happens when you push somebody. They miss their steps. They can fall over. But when you're asking, how can I help these people to reach their target? Then I'm starting to asking, where are they struggling? What are some of the variables that I'm missing? I keep on mentioning the word variable because it is a powerful word for awareness, and it's a powerful word for facilitating for our intelligence. When you understand that with every single environment that you are in, there are variables of, let's talk about problems. There are variables that constitute our own equation of struggle. And if we can properly unpack those variables, then we're able to come up with the right solutions for that. So purpose is an important part of that. Purpose is an important part because purpose is going to determine the questions you're going to ask. And these purpose also must always be lined up with what? Your own mission. One of the challenges in the case that I wanted to share earlier on was this company that asked me to come in. They have this department. It's an economic department that specializes in economy, and normally the staff members have to become expert witness in the court of law. The minimum standard is master's level of economics. They had been struggling for years to get these guys to also do their PhDs, even though there's a program that funds that program. The reason why they need PhDs is because when you are a doctor and you have a PhD, then as an expert, you have high credibility, obviously enabling the company to win more cases. The first question that I asked was that, what is the average age of the people that when you bring them into the company, and how long do they stay for? I found out that they stay longer, but they normally start out very young. And because of the triple BE, of course, in transformation, a lot of them starting young, and they're obviously Black. Obviously, they come from underprivileged communities. Now, one thing that we have to be aware of about life stages, again, there's also the effect of the sphere of existence. And where are you in the position of your own sphere? If I'm a young black guy, a young black woman that comes from the township, and now I am working in this company as an economist, master's level, and I'm earning 7 figures a year, the jump from 0 to 7 figures a year is a massive jump. So I'm still trying to make sense of the fact that I'm earning 1.something million rand a year, and you're telling me about PhD. When I look at myself compared to my peers are so much less, the guys that I grew up into school with, they're so much lower than I am in terms of success. I'm at the top of the pyramid in terms of the hierarchy. I'm at the top of the pyramid. I'm the one, I'm the man. When I come, the one that has the SUV, I'm the one that has the multi-million rand house. I'm the one that has the, that has the money. So there isn't much personally motivating me to then do a PhD if it is only about your company. So then I had to make them aware of that, and then perhaps have some kind of a plan that maybe after a year or 2 years, have a plan where these people can start going into their PhDs, but they have to give them time to acclimatize to this massive change. Otherwise, the pressure of having to do a PhD, having to become this person that is now a 7-figure earner annually, and the lifestyle changes that come with that, to move from having nothing to that takes time.
Okay, Zuki's got a question. Please give a recent case study where a company has used mindset work to impact the staff during this time where remote work is a reality. I think that is definitely something that's quite critical, because working remotely poses its challenges on its own.
Yes, one of the things that I suggest companies do is that especially managers. Obviously, it's difficult to do it at a company level, but let's say managers that manage teams, to have casual chats with their teams every now and then, instead of like having the meeting always having to do Zoom. Maybe planning on a weekly basis or bi-weekly, to have just a casual chat with the guys to catch up, find out how things are. Where it's not about work, but it's just about, hey guys, what's going on? Like you used to do at work. Now that element is no longer there, you have to then put that in there, because then you're losing connection with people, and the people are feeling alone and isolated, and they need human interaction. And one of the ways is to have a very simple, casual Zoom chat where you're not going to be discussing anything, maybe just talking about politics and just catching up on how everybody's at. The reason why that is important is because I understand in terms of mindset.
The social element.
The social element, relationship is a key part of how we get influenced. And that, and also the connecting with one another is an important part of being loyal and remaining committed to each other. When I'm by myself and doing my work, I don't care so much whether or not Elaine has done her work any longer. And then the other thing is that, and to have let me give this a case with a company that was having difficulty with relationships, where you had to use mindset with relationships. I had to do a relationship coaching, where I had to have the guys understand that some people at work, it's not so easy. It's not as easy as being at home, as easy as being at work. Because maybe you have to give them time for them to adjust. Like at home right now, when I'm at home, now my wife is also at home. Because she doesn't understand what I do and the flexibility of what I do, she thinks I have more time than her. Right? And then I've been asked to do more errands. And I'll say, hey, dude, I still have to do my work. And just because I'm talking all the time doesn't mean that I'm having fun. I'm doing work here. I'm not hitting the computer, I'm doing work. And couples don't understand sometimes when somebody at home that actually they still have the same level of demand on their time. And it doesn't necessarily mean now that my husband is at home, he can just go buy milk or maybe go do this errand. And so being able to talk and sit down as a company, also talk about, okay, guys, what are some of the challenges that you at home are experiencing? What are some of the variables? Do you have a new baby? Are you newly married? What is the situation with the Wi-Fi in the area where you were at? Because in the area where I'm at, Wi-Fi is not always very stable. It goes in and out. Those things can be quite frustrating. What can the company do then to make it easier for you at home? Some companies are not even giving people data at home. And also you're still using those old computers that have struggled sometimes, sort of like downloading information at a certain speed, and then that can impact productivity. And so that's what I had to say to the guys, like, listen, you are accusing each other of laziness and all kinds of other sorts of other things, but Elaine, what are your struggles? What are some of the challenges at home? And then he says it. And then we start to think about that. And then we start thinking about shifts. We start thinking about, would we need to then invest in infrastructure to help the people?
Absolutely, resources. Any more questions from the audience? Nothing just yet. I think what you shared today, Jabu, just really touched home with so many people, and I think I honestly believe it was extremely thought-provoking. What we have come to the end of our session, and I know that you have so much that you could still share and enlighten us with. But before we do sign off, Jabu, if you could just put your screen up with your contact details. I don't know if you've got a screen, a slide in the deck like that.
My website is mindsetdevelopmentinstitute.com. Mindsetdevelopmentinstitute.com. It's still in the process of being revamped. And on that, I've got different courses. I've got a full mindset development course, which is provided in the form of cohorts and also at an individual level. At the individual level, it takes more of a coaching format, where I use that to help you to unpack your life as far as your career, as far as your relationships, and even your own performance ability as a person, as an individual, in the different settings where you're required to perform as a family person, in the work environment, even maybe if you're, an activist or somebody important in the community. And I also have a coaching program that I do that's called the Mindset Excellence Coaching. Mindset Excellence Coaching is really about understanding mindset excellence. What makes my program different from other mindset things that I don't do more than meditation, but I actually do more. I do take people through a process of introspection. I help them to build critical thinking structures using science and art being the weakness with which all of us are made with. That as much as there's a standard way of doing things that is common, that can help us with predictability and consistency, there's also an element of our own unique design, which can become inconsistent at times. And we have to be careful of those two variables as people. And the most important thing that I believe that people normally get from the programs that I run, and whether it be in the form of a leadership program or coaching, is that you will really have critical thinking tools that you can use to measure and to label things correctly in your lives. You don't allocate wrong meaning to things. That when you are scared, you're being negative. No, you're scared. Now you ask yourself, why am I scared? And what makes it scary? Identify those variables. And then what can I do about them? Not to make judgments and not to really do certain things that'll hold you back. But on social media, if you search for Mindset Development Institute or you search for Zwane Mindset, you are able to find me on different platforms. And I'm also on Clubhouse. On Clubhouse, I run rooms now. I run rooms on Monday, 2 to 4 p.m. and rooms on Fridays, 2 to 4 p.m. on mindset development. And then you'll have an opportunity to ask a lot of questions. And I do run different themes on mindset development. Then next week, I'll be talking about how do we develop the right resilient mindset for the current environment, not just COVID, but for the current variables that we experience. Become resilient. How do you make sure that your emotions are intact? That's basically that, Master Elaine. Thank you so much.
I'm definitely going to start investigating that. Something that I think that we could all draw inspiration and encouragement from, learnings from, so that we can ultimately focus on our own individual awareness. Jabu, we've had some really great comments from you. Thank you so much. I really appreciate your contribution today. and it all starts with the individual, and us committing to creating or developing our own awareness.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, everybody, for being here this morning and for just indulging me and listening to what I had to say. I really, really do appreciate it. And also you, Lainey. Thank you so much to you and the team at ASDSA. I really appreciate the opportunity and the platform and for entrusting me with your people. And I hope it was it met your expectations, it met your objectives, and it was as valuable as you hoped it would be. Thank you so much.
Absolutely, 100%. Thank you so much, Jabu.